Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi 1 week at a time, Masechet Sanhedrin. This is our 14th class, and today we're going to be reviewing Daf 93 through 99. And if you remember, we were speaking about we're in the last. Sorry, 1 second. We were speaking about the three prophets that were saved by God. They were thrown into a fiery furnace, and we were discussing the miracles that happened on the day that they were saved. So the Gemara on Daf 93 tells us that when the three, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, were saved, the nations shamed the Jewish people because the Jewish people had bowed down to Nebuchadnezzar's idols, but these people refused to bow down. And God was elevated by these three, but not by all the Jewish people. And therefore, he actually wanted to destroy the Jews, and because they bowed down to Nebuchadnezzar's idols. But then he calmed down, meaning God calmed down, after Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah did not bow down. And one conclusion to the story is actually later on they actually die because of Ain Hara, meaning people put the evil eye on them, right, that they were saved, and therefore they died later on, or maybe they were embarrassed because other people did bow down to idols, or maybe they actually lived and they moved to Israel and got married and had children. Okay. As Ilanit mentions here, we're going to have a lot of stories that deal with the coming of the Moshiach. So we are going to continue. So now the Gemara asks, where was Daniel? If you remember your Tanakh, Daniel does live in Bavel at the same time. And the question is, where was he, right? We know that he was their friend, so he should have been around. But the Gemara says that no, he was not around. He went to Tiberia, or maybe he was sent to Egypt. But basically, God sends Daniel away. Why would that be? Because he wanted to make sure that it was very clear that they were saved on their own merit and not because of Daniel. Again, Daniel was a great Navi who spoke to God, right? He has his own book in Tanakh. But the Gemara wanted to make sure that he wasn't there to show that they had their own merit. Nebuchadnezzar, again, who's the king of Bavel, and Daniel, wanted him away at this moment because Nebuchadnezzar treated Daniel as a god, and he actually had bowed down to Daniel. So therefore, he wanted him away. And at this time, there were false prophets, two false prophets that were the sources of curses, and Nebuchadnezzar actually burnt them. So what's going on here? So the Gemara explains that they told the daughter of Nebuchadnezzar that she should sleep with them, and then Nebuchadnezzar figured it out. So then he checked them to see if they were real prophets. Because if you read the book of Daniel, you see that Nebuchadnezzar did have a great respect for real prophets, but obviously not for false prophets. And basically, how would he figure out if they were real prophets? He was going to throw them into fire. And then they thought that someone else's merit would save them, but that wasn't true. And they get thrown in and they die, as opposed to, right, Abraham, who is saved when he's thrown into the pit, and as opposed to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Okay. All right. From here, we are going to talk about the coming of Moshiach. So we know that Moshiach comes from David, who comes from Ruth, and therefore the Gemara tells us that Boaz gives Ruth 6 stalks of barley. And the question is why. So the Gemara explains that it's a hint that that she will have 6 sons who will come from her. Who are these 6 amazing sons? Meaning not basically descendants, right? David, Moshiach, Daniel, Mishael, Hananiah, and Azariah. And each of them has 6 blessings. And the Gemara goes through how each one of these people was blessed 6 times. So the first one is David, and the verse basically says that they describe David to Shaul the king. This is right before the killing of Goliath, and they say how David is so amazing, and it talks about 6 different ways that he's so amazing. And the Gemara says those are the 6 blessings of David. It's actually interesting. This is the source that shows that I would say the simple reading of the verse is that David is a warrior, and he's very mighty, and he's very brave. But the Gemara actually takes every single one of these characteristics and shows how it's not that he was mighty and brave and he's a warrior on the battlefield. Rather, he was a warrior in the study hall, in the Beit Midrash, that he learned Torah, and that God always listened to what he said. The next is Moshiach. There are 6 brachot that are about the Messiah, and the Gemara brings the verse there, and he had many mitzvot, but also many challenges. What was so unique about, what will be very unique about the Moshiach is that he can tell who is correct in judgment. When they make a judgment, he would know who is correct, and that seems to be a very special power. Rabbi Akiva, this is actually appropriate for Pesach. Rabbi Akiva thought that Bar Kochba was the Messiah, right? Bar Kochba, who led the Great Revolt, and Rabbi Akiva thought he was the Messiah. But he could not judge this way. He didn't have this discernment in terms of judgment, and therefore he was killed, and it proved that he was not the Messiah. Daniel, Mishael, Hananiah, and Azariah. Again, we just mentioned Daniel and the 3 people who were thrown into the furnace. Again, 6 brachot. Therefore, they were brought to Nebuchadnezzar, and they had all learned in Babylonia, and they didn't have any blemishes. And the Gemara goes through what are all the 6 blessings that each of them had. One opinion is that they were eunuchs. One opinion was they weren't. One says that they prevented each other. They prevented other people from bowing down to idols. And the Gemara has different opinions as to what was their greatness. God told them, right? So fitting if in line with this idea that they were eunuchs, one opinion is that God tells them, right, there's something better than children, and the pasuk says, Yad Vashem Tov mibanim ubanot, which basically means, right, a monument that can be built for you is greater than children. And this is a proof that they were eunuchs, but it's also the source for the famous Holocaust museum in Israel called Yad Vashem. right, which is in memorial of people who were killed in the Holocaust and could not have children. So it comes from this pasuk that monuments are very important. Okay, since we're talking about this time period, the Gemara talks about the book of Ezra, that most of the book of Ezra is written by Nehemiah. He wanted credit, therefore his name was removed from the book. He wanted a reward, or maybe because he spoke negatively about earlier rulers of Israel, and therefore they took his name off of the book. Why is this being brought up? Because the Gemara says that Daniel was greater than Nehemiah, right? Because he had prophecy. Again, Nehemiah is the leader of the people during what's called Shivat Zion, the return to Zion. And Daniel, as we said before, was also a prophet. Daf 94, Chagai, Zechariah, and Melachi were also prophets. Nehemiah was not. He was a political leader, but Nehemiah was greater than them. But Daniel was greater than Nehemiah, right? So I guess the Gemara is looking to compare all of these great leaders. The Gemara is now going to talk about Chizkiyahu, the king. So Chizkiyahu took over for his evil father Achaz and became the king. And he started a huge tshuva movement for repentance. The people were doing terrible, terrible things before he became the king. And he had all of the people repent. And Assyria invaded Israel at this time and exiled the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes, and then laid siege around Jerusalem. And Chizkiyahu davens, right? He prays to God, and the whole enemy camp became sick and they died, and they were really saved and redeemed. So the Gemara talks about Chizkiyahu and says that really Chizkiyahu was supposed to be the Messiah. He was supposed to be Mashiach, but he didn't sing a praise to God, right? He didn't say Hallel when he was saved, and therefore he was not the Messiah. Okay, right? Yeshayahu was sad that Chizkiyahu wouldn't be Mashiach, and speaks about that. There is a verse in Yeshayahu that talks about an angel, Duma, who is in charge of all the spirits, and the question was, they asked, when will the exile end? And they say, right, there's going to be a very long night before the Mashiach comes. And if you do tshuva, then he will come sooner. And then the Gemara brings up Yitro, who blesses God after Yam Suf. And it's actually a criticism of the Jewish people that that went through Yam Suf, but they didn't bless God. And then obviously the Gemara says, wait, what do you mean? The Jews did sing a song, right? We have the Az Yashir, but it seems that it was not enough. And Yitro's song or blessing is stronger than that. It says that Yitro converted, he circumcises himself, or right, he felt distress when he heard that the Egyptians died. Back to Chizkiyahu, the king, he had 8 different names. Sanhedrin, now Sanhedrin is the general that laid siege to Jerusalem in the time of Chizkiyahu, and it seems that Sanhedrin also has 8 names like Chizkiyahu. And some say that he was smart, and some say that he was foolish. We said that the 10 tribes were exiled. Some say to Africa, some say to a place called Selug, and Then the Gemara talks about punishment. So God punishes Paro, right? Again, back we're comparing these two right great nations and armies that tried to kill the Jewish people, and God intervenes and saves them. So God punishes Paro directly, also very appropriate before Pesach. But with Sanhedrin, he actually sent a messenger. It seems that Sanhedrin boasts and mocks God. He also said that God tells him to destroy the Jewish people. Pekach was an evil king of the Jewish people of the 10 tribes versus Chizkiyahu, who again of Judah, who is very righteous. The Navi was talking about the 10 tribes, but Sanhedrin, right, meaning God told Sanhedrin, the prophet told Sanhedrin that he is allowed to destroy the Jewish people, but he meant the 10 tribes, right? They were evil, they were doing terrible things, so they deserved exile. But then Sanhedrin thought, oh, if I'm already here, I might as well keep going and kill all the Jews. And that was his mistake, and that's where, and that's why the army died. The 10 tribes, it says, lightened the yoke of Torah, and therefore they were lost, right? That's why we call them the lost tribes, right? They're taken into exile. But in Judah, they increased the yoke of Torah, meaning their obligation, their commitment to Torah, and therefore they were saved. It seems that God does bring Sanhedrin to Jerusalem, but he also was going to save the Jewish people. So we say that the yoke of Sanhedrin was broken by the oil of Chizkiyahu, meaning the oil that burnt in the lamps in the Beit Midrash, in the study hall, that, right, they encouraged people to learn Torah, and that is what saved the Jewish people at the time. The Yeshayahu tells the people to go and take the spoils from the enemy camp, and then, right, and they're allowed to take whatever they want. And it says that there were 10 marches that Sanhedrin does towards Jerusalem, and the Gemara says, right, which cities he goes through. Yeshayahu tells them not to be afraid of Sanhedrin, the people of Jerusalem, but you should fear the lion, right? The lion is Nebuchadnezzar, who we mentioned at the beginning. He is the one who is going to destroy the temple and Jerusalem. Daf 95, it says that Yirmiyahu would prophesy about Nebuchadnezzar. And again, the image of a lion, right? Sanhedrin, Nebuchadnezzar is compared to a lion. That day was the last day that the Jewish people were held responsible for the massacre in Nov. If you remember the book of Shmuel, the book of Samuel, we have the story of Shaul, King Saul, who kills all the priests that live in the city of Nov because they help David. And it seems that the Jewish people were held responsible for this terrible day till this day of Sanhedrin's siege to Jerusalem, meaning, which is why he was able to set siege. But that was that. Right? It took him one day to get to Jerusalem. It looked very small to him. He thought that it would be easy to conquer. However, that was not the case. Since we're talking about Nov, or we mentioned Nov, now the Gemara is going to talk about Nov. Right, again, David was a little bit at fault, right? He went there, he was running away from Shaul, but he did put them all in danger, right? Because of him, Shaul and his sons died. David preferred to and right, there is a culpability that God sees that David is responsible, and therefore God comes to David and says, you can choose what your punishment is going to be. Do you want to be punished, or should your children be punished? And David chooses that he should be punished over his children, and therefore the giant Yishbi, who's the brother of Goliath, captured him, but then he was saved. How was he saved? Avishai, who's one of his officers, got a sign that David was in trouble, and then, excuse me. Okay. So the officer goes and tries. He goes to save David. He takes David's mule, and on the way, he sees Orpah. Orpah, if you remember from the story of Ruth, is Ruth's, again, the Midrash says sister, right, or co-wife, right? Orpah was the one who leaves and goes back to her home in Moab, as opposed to Ruth, who goes with Naomi to Israel. Orpah is the mother of Yishbi and Goliath, right? That's what they say, that right, the two women, right, the two sisters gave birth, right? Their descendants later fight each other, David and Goliath. Anyway, she tries to kill Avishai, and therefore he kills her, because as we learned in this Masechet, if someone comes to kill another person, that person is allowed to defend themselves. Yishbi threw David up, right? He wanted to kill David, so he throws him up and he puts a spear under him. And then Avishai, again, the officer, says the name of God, and David freezes in the air, right? It seems to be some magical, it has some magical power. Wait 1 second. It has some magical power. David freezes in the air, and that's how Avishai saves David. And what does Avishai say? Right, he davens to Hashem that David should be saved, and if Hashem needs to punish someone, he should punish David's children, which is very sad, but okay. We mentioned that it took Sanhedrin 1 day to get to Jerusalem, and therefore, we mentioned that Avishai went to go save David, and there's the implication of the story is that he got there very quickly. This is something called kfitzat haderech. Kfitzat haderech means that God, right, again, magically or spiritually shortens the distance for people. So the Gemara says that this happens for 3 people. Eliezer, who's the servant of Abraham, when he goes to find a bride for Yitzchak, for Yaakov, when he gets to Beit El, he also gets there suddenly, and Avishai, as we mentioned. Okay, the verse says that David's children were destroyed, again, because of Nov, but there was 1 child left, and he survived. Back to Sanhedrin, right? He came with a huge army against Jerusalem, and it's the same size army that fought against Abraham, and it's also the same size of the army that's going to be in the big battle that we're going to learn about in a little bit, called the War of Gog uMagog. This is a end of days war, and the army will be very large. It says that the army swam across the Jordan River, but because there were so many people, they basically, absorbed, soaked up all the water as they were crossing, so that by the end, people were actually crossing in dry, right, riverbed, because there were so many people that were crossing the river. Even though, how would that work if the river's flowing? But okay, fine. On that day, excuse me, on that day, 180,000 people died, maybe even more people died, right? An angel killed them with his hand or maybe his finger, right? It reminds us of what we say in the Haggadah, right? Etzba Elohim, right? God used his finger or his hand to save the Jewish people. Okay, some soldiers do survive, and the Gemara lists them, right? Some of them are, right, Nebuchadnezzar and Sanhedrin, and a few other people. Right, God showed up to Sanhedrin as an old man, and he told him to change his appearance. This is how he kills him. This is how he approaches him. So he tells him to go get scissors and to shave, and it took a long time, and it was nighttime. So he lit a fire, and basically the fire burnt his beard and his hair. And then Sanhedrin found a board from Noah's Ark, and he decided he was going to sacrifice his sons. And when right, to God, right, because he realized, wow, God is so amazing. And when his sons found out what he wanted to do, the sons killed him, meaning, so the sons killed him, not God. Daf 96, Abraham waged war against, we mentioned that Abraham waged war against the 4 kings. All right, he went out at night, and right, there was an angel named Night that helped him, or maybe the stars fought for him. Abraham got weak when he reached Dan, when he got to the area of Dan, because that's the place that his descendants would do idolatry. Nebuchadnezzar, right? And it's interesting, right? The Gemara says, in comparison to, or in contrast to Nebuchadnezzar, when he got to that point, he got strong because that's the place where people started worshiping idols. Okay, we're mentioning Nebuchadnezzar. So Nebuchadnezzar again is the right, so Nebuchadnezzar, right, Yirmiyahu asks God why evil people are successful, right? Why is Nebuchadnezzar allowed to destroy the Jerusalem and the Beit HaMikdash? So it says, right, God rewarded Nebuchadnezzar for 4 paces, for 4 steps that he took. And therefore, all the more so, God is going to reward, right, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Meaning, I think many times, theologically, we are troubled when good things happen to bad people. And the answer in the Gemara is that it's not that good things happen to bad people and then bad things are going to happen to good people, which is also true. But the Gemara says, if these good things are happening to these bad people, wow, how amazing is it going to be for all the righteous people in the world? That's the Gemara's point, meaning instead of looking at the bad things that happen to good people, which also happen, recognize that it's going to be so much more amazing for the righteous people. We just don't see it yet because it's going to happen in the next world, which we will also talk about tonight. Okay, so now what good did Nebuchadnezzar do? So when Chizkiyahu was sick, again, the king Chizkiyahu, the good king, when he was sick and then he got better, the king of Bavel sent him letters and gifts. And on that day, 10 hours were added to that day. By the way, Israel is changing the clocks tomorrow night, so that's a good thing to add here. And therefore, right, the king, right? So the king wanted to send letters, and Nebuchadnezzar was the scribe to this king at that time, and he told the other scribes, really, when you're writing a letter to Chizkiyahu, you should first put God's name before Jerusalem and the king, and he runs after the messengers to get back the old letters so he could fix the letter. And therefore, because he ran 4 paces after these messengers, he is rewarded for those 4 steps. Okay, and here the Gemara talks about that Babylonian king who was named after his father, and as an aside, or in relation to this conversation, the Gemara says that a servant should always honor his master, right? And there's a verse that says that the general was standing before Nebuchadnezzar when he sacked Jerusalem, but he wasn't there. And they said actually there was like an image of on the wall, right, or on an image of him on his chariot, or because he had such great fear of him, he showed him respect. Originally, Nebuzadran, that's the name of the general, was not successful and was afraid. And God told him, no, try again. Again, this is for the destruction of Jerusalem in the time when it was the right time. And God tells him, try again, because this is the time that the temple needs to be destroyed. And here the Gemara describes what happened, right? He killed people all the way up. It's very like gruesome. He kills people all the way to the Beit HaMikdash, to the temple, and he sets it on fire. Right then he became very haughty, and God said, you're just the messenger, right? It's not because you're so great, it's because I let you do what you're doing now. Nebuzadran said that the blood of Zechariah the Kohen, the priest, was boiling on the floor of the temple, and he prophesied, Zechariah the Kohen prophesied that the temple was going to be destroyed, and that the Jews didn't like this at the time, so they killed him. And because of that, his blood couldn't rest till he said, till Nebuzadran said to him being the blood on the floor, he said to him, do you want me to kill more people? Right? He started killing all these people, and then it stopped. Nebuzadran realized the greatness of just one Jew, and therefore, says the Gemara, he actually runs away and converts to Judaism, which is quite ironic. Since we're talking about people who convert, Ne'eman, who is also a non-Jewish general, so he also he's called a ger toshav, which means that he didn't fully convert to Judaism, but he takes upon himself to not do idolatry. Nebuzadran was a full convert. He was and the heirs of Sisra, right? So now the Gemara goes through like all these generals that were terrible, but their descendants actually convert to Judaism, right? The heirs of Sisra, they teach Torah, and the descendants of Sanhedrin also teach Torah. This is Shmaya and Avtalion, who were great leaders, great sages. The children of Haman actually teach Torah in Bnei Brak, but the descendants of Nebuchadnezzar were not allowed to convert, meaning it seems that I guess God had a limit on how bad you can be that I'll let your children convert. Apparently there's a limit. So Nebuchadnezzar was not allowed, his children were not allowed to convert. Ammon and Moab were bad neighbors of Jerusalem. They actually right? Again, it's interesting. Sorry, I had to interrupt for a minute. Right? We're talking about things that happen in Jewish history, and ultimately, right, the Gemara says, right, and as we believe, everything is in God's plan. But just because it's in God's plan doesn't mean that the people themselves who are doing it, there aren't consequences, right? So here, even though we know that Nebuchadnezzar needs to destroy Jerusalem, right, there are limits. And therefore, Ammon and Moab, who were the nations who were neighbors of Jerusalem, they invited Nebuchadnezzar to destroy the temple. They knew that God would not be on our side, and therefore they took advantage of that. Daf 97, by the way, I also just have to say that these dafim are extremely long, so just so you should know, there's a lot here. Okay, daf 97. Daf 97 starts our conversation about Moshiach. And the question is, when is Moshiach coming? Right? So, in Chabad, they say we want Moshiach now, which is right. We all want Moshiach now. And as you can see from this, you'll see this discussion. For 2,000 years, we want Moshiach. So this is even a conversation in the Gemara. It's a very lengthy conversation. And I do have to say that it's important to recognize that, and we'll see as we learn it, first of all, there's no real answer, right? No one's going to say, even though some people say, in the year 452, that's when Mashiach is going to come, even though we'll see that people do say that. So these are difficult dapim to learn because we're still waiting for Mashiach and we're still looking for redemption. And I think that these dapim on one hand are comforting, but on the other hand are challenging. And I would also like to say that ultimately I do not understand these pages. They are quite esoteric. But I will explain the words. But we really do not fully understand all of these ideas. Okay, so with that introduction, we will explain what the Gemara says. So Daf 97, when is Moshiach going to come? We're going to see many opinions. The first of which is when there are very few sages. When there's a lot of grief and sorrow and challenges. Also, I just want to say, sorry, I keep interrupting myself. A lot of the things that we're going to learn today, I think, ring very true and very clear to us. I think that there are very powerful messages here. Okay. The Gemara talks about a 7-year cycle like Shemitah and says that on the first year, right, so the 7-year cycle of when the Mashiach is going to come, the first year, there's going to be famine in a few places. The second year, there's going to be more famine everywhere. On the third year, there's going to be a terrible famine and righteous people are going to die. In the fourth year, there's going to be plenty, but people won't really feel full. On the fifth year, there's going to be great plenty and Torah is going to come back. On the sixth, there are going to be these kolot, large, big sounds. On the seventh year, there's going to be great wars between the Jews and the non-Jews. And after that, Moshiach is going to come. And it has to be in this exact order. Another opinion is that the Galil is going to be destroyed and the border cities, the people from the border cities are going to wander. They're not going to have any houses. There's not going to be enough food. People are going to become brazen. There's no truth. People will make fun of people who do good and of people who speak the truth. The youth will embarrass the old. The government will be filled with heretics. There will be a lot of informants. There are going to be very few students of Torah. People are not going to have money. People are going to give up hope of the redemption. If some of these things sound familiar. It says that 3 things are going to come when you least expect it. Moshiach, a found item, right? We all know that when you're looking for something, you're looking, you don't find it, but then when you stop looking, that's when you find it. And apparently scorpions. They come out of nowhere and they bite you. So one idea is that Moshiach is going to come when you least expect it. Okay, another opinion, and by the way, many of these opinions are going to contradict each other, in case that wasn't clear yet. So again, everyone has the right to their opinion, as we say, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim, right? All of these, right? This and that are true. So how that is, we'll see a little bit of that today. Another opinion is the world is going to exist for 6,000 years. By the way, we're at year 5,785. So the world is going to exist for 6,000 years. Then it's going to be destroyed for 1,000 years, or maybe it's going to be destroyed for 2,000 years. We're going to see that based on this, right, a day for God is like 1,000 years. So therefore, right, one day is like 1,000 years. Therefore, 6,000 and 7,000. Okay, what's going to happen, right? There are going to be 2,000 years where there's no Torah, 2,000 years where there is Torah, 2,000 years with Moshiach. Another opinion is the world is going to be no less than 4,250. We passed that. Another opinion is it's going to be 4,291. At that point, the world is going to end. There's going to be a great war, and then Moshiach is going to come. Another opinion is, right, we should wait because Moshiach is definitely going to come. We just don't know when. Other rabbis tried to calculate exactly when he was going to come. The Gemara says, and I think this is, we should highlight, right? It's very dangerous to make calculations because if you give a date and that date passes, right, the danger is you're going to say, oh, he was supposed to come today, but he didn't, and therefore he's probably not coming, right? The idea of, we read recently, right? We read a few weeks ago about the golden calf, right? The idea is they thought exactly, Jinx Nohar, right? The golden calf, the Cheta Egel, they thought Moshe was going to come. They did a calculation. He didn't come. They're like, oh, I guess he is not coming. But, right, they made there was an error in their calculation. And therefore, the Gemara says you should just wait. Don't calculate, just wait. What is preventing Moshiach from coming? Din, right? Judgment, justice, right? We need rachamim, we need compassion, right? We're waiting for merit, and then God is going to come. Very famous idea is that in every generation, there are 36 righteous people who can receive the Shekhinah, the divine presence. Or maybe there are 18,000. The Gemara says, you're right. There's a difference. 18,000 people can like relate to God, but on a lower level. But there are 36 who can see God clearly. The term in Aramaic is aspaklaria me'ira, which means, right, clear sight. They can see God clearly. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, if there are only two people in the world that can see God, it's me and my son. And they can talk to God even without permission. All the ends that, like all these calculations already passed, now it's only relying on tshuva, on repentance and good deeds, right? Meaning the Gemara is saying, stop making calculations with your calculator, go out and do good, right? You're going to bring Moshiach by doing good, kind things to other people and by repentance. Then the Gemara says, no, there's actually a set time and Moshiach is going to come in that set time, and it doesn't matter what we do. And this is a big machloket. How is the redemption going to come about, right? Is it going to be that, right, if we, so then the Gemara says, right, is it going to be because we do tshuva, or is it going to be at a certain time? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you, right, if you do tshuva, you're going to be redeemed easily, right? The process is going to be easy. If not, it's going to be a very hard life, and then that is going to lead you to do tshuva, and then Moshiach is going to come in the right time, right? Again, another opinion is no, the geula, the redemption is going to come no matter what, even if you do not do tshuva. Daf 98, at the end of time, Moshiach is going to come, as we said, maybe even without doing tshuva. there's going to be an abundance of fruit before the Mashiach comes, or maybe it means the economy is, that means everything is going to be good, or maybe the opposite, everything is going to be so bad before he comes. There's not going to be any peace for the righteous people, or maybe the prices, right? Either prices are going to be high or they're going to be low, or there's not even going to be any food, or maybe it'll be till we don't have autonomy in Israel, or it's till there won't be any arrogance in Israel, or till there won't be any judges or officers. Jerusalem is going to be rebuilt through charity, through tzedakah. And then the Gemara says, if there's a generation that has many troubles, you should expect Mashiach, meaning that's the sign that Mashiach is going to come. Or no, Mashiach is going to come to a generation that is entirely virtuous or totally guilty, right? All of these things are based on verses in the Tanakh. Now, again, a very famous machloket. There are two verses that, I mean, there are many, but there are two specific verses that describe the redemption. One is it's going to come bi'ita, right, in its time. And another one is achishena, God is going to bring it quicker, right? So which is it? In its time or quicker? And again, as we said before, if we have merit, if we do tshuva, it will come quicker. If not, it'll come in its time, right? Is it going to come slowly or is it going to be quick, right? Again, based on merit. From on this daf, we have the very famous idea that Moshiach is going to come riding a donkey, right? A non-Jewish king said, a donkey, why wouldn't he be riding a horse? The Gemara says, no, don't worry, it's going to be a very majestic donkey. But the image is that it's slow, right? The donkey goes slowly. The redemptive process is a slow process. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi met Eliyahu. Now, by the way, right, Eliyahu is associated with the coming of Moshiach. The idea is that he generally comes the day before Moshiach comes. So also, when the sages in the Gemara want to know about things that are happening above, they meet Eliyahu, right? So I don't know if it's a means of prophecy or, but it says that they meet Eliyahu. So Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi meets Eliyahu and he asks him, when is Mashiach going to come? And he tells him, he's already here. Go to the city gate. He's actually sitting with all those paupers who are diseased. And then he goes and he finds him and he says, right, and Mashiach, right, says, I'm going to come today. But then he doesn't, meaning there's no redemption. And Eliyahu explains that he meant if you do tshuva, then, right, if you repent, then he's going to come today. But if you don't, so then he won't, right? And again, the image is that the potential is there every day. We just have to, I think, take advantage of that. It says that Moshiach is going to come when the gates of Rome fall 3 times, and the sign is when the waters of the caves of Tamias turn red. My friend Shuli Mishkin wrote a beautiful article this week about what this is, and really it's about the Banias. I don't know if you've heard, right? The Banias is a beautiful spring and river that's up north. And I didn't know, but it was a place where they actually worshipped idolatry, right? And the idea is it's going to turn red, maybe with blood from idolatry, not from idolatry, but the idea is they're using that as the symbol of the place where Mashiach is going to either come or it's going to be a sign that Mashiach is here. Some rabbis say, I want to be around when Mashiach comes. I want Mashiach to come, but I don't want to be around when he comes, right? And others say, no, I actually do want to be around when he comes. Why would they not want to be around? As we mentioned before, and here it's spelled out, there's a concept called Chevlei Moshiach, the travails of the Messiah, meaning when the Messiah comes, it's going to be a challenging time. However, right, again, the Gemara adds, if you do good deeds and learn Torah, so then you'll be saved from those travails. The Gemara tells us that the world was only created for David, or maybe it was only created for Moshe, or maybe it was only created for Moshiach, meaning, what's this idea? Which era was, had the most blessing, right? David, Moshe, or Moshiach. The Gemara asks, what's Moshiach's name? There are a lot of different options. If you're looking for some boys' names, right? Shiloh, Yinon, Chanina, Menachem, Mitzorah. There are a few different names here. They say that he should be. They say that he should be like Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, or like Daniel. Brings us back to Daniel the prophet. And some say that there's, so Daf 99, Yimot HaMashiach is going to be about 40 years, or maybe 70, or maybe 3 generations, or maybe there's not going to be a Mashiach. Maybe we're going to go straight to the redemption without Mashiach, because as we said, Chizkiyahu was supposed to be the Mashiach. So maybe we lost that privilege. Or no, there is going to be a Mashiach. Or maybe it's going to take 400 years, or maybe 365, or maybe 7,000. As you can see, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of different opinions. All the Nevi'im, right, all the prophets speak about these great rewards that are going to happen during Yimot HaMashiach. Again, Yimot HaMashiach is the time when Mashiach is here. Well, that's one option. Another opinion is there's not going to be any difference between now and when Mashiach comes, except that we're going to have sovereignty in our land. Sound familiar? Or maybe the prophets were talking about the reward for Ba'alei Tshuva, right? People who strengthened their Judaism, right? They went off the right, Baal Tshuva, they went off the path and then they came back. Right, as we say, right, here's a very famous line, right? In the place that a Baal Tshuva is standing, even the greatest rabbi can't stand there, right? That means, right, they are so righteous that they're more righteous than righteous people. Why? Because they used to be far and now they are close, right? There was great improvement. Or no, maybe it is talking about the tzaddikim, the righteous people who were far from sin, not far from God. If a person says Torah isn't from God, right? We're going back to the Mishnah that we started with last week. We said that if a person says the Torah isn't from God, he does not get a portion in the next world. If a person embarrasses his friend in public, even if he does great deeds and he's a Torah scholar, he's also going to lose a portion in Olam Haba, right? And I think it's a beautiful concept that, right, we value all of these things, right? Meaning you can't learn Torah all day and then be really not nice to people outside, your circles. So that is also important. Even if a person says that only one verse isn't from God in the Torah, this is a way that he despises the word of God. If someone doesn't teach Torah, or maybe if he doesn't learn Mishnah, or if he doesn't learn Torah, or if he does idolatry, all of these are somebody who despises the word of Torah. Since we're talking about learning Torah, you should review your Torah all the time. The Gemara tells us that people were created for working hard, in case you thought that it was for taking vacations. No, we're here to work hard. The question is, what does that mean, work hard? Like physically, or maybe, right, with our mouths, right? Do a lot of good. And the Gemara says, right, we were also put here to keep the Torah. We need to learn Torah consistently. That's going to keep it fresh in our minds. Back to people who did terrible things. Menashe blasphemes God. He actually ridicules the Torah. And as a tangent, the Gemara tells us that the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara, comes to people, and in the beginning it looks like a spider thread, right? Spider web, right? Very thin, but then it becomes like a thick rope, right? It entices us that it's not a big deal, but then you get bound to the Yetzer Hara. And doing bad things. If you learn Torah, you make peace between this world and the next world, or you build a palace up in heaven, or you bring the redemption closer. If this another famous idea, if you teach your friend's son, right, or child Torah, it's as if that child is yours, or it's as if you've remade yourself. If you cause someone to do a mitzvah, it's as if you did it, meaning you get a reward. And the last thing for today is about an apikores. What is an apikores? One opinion is it's someone who denigrates a Torah sage, or he denigrates a friend in front of a Torah sage, a Talmid Chacham. But we are going to learn much more about the apikores next week. Woo. With that, I wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom and a Chodesh Tov. It's Rosh Chodesh on Sunday. We have 3 more minutes, so I'm happy to open up for a few quick comments / questions. And don't ask me if I understand anything I just said.
No, we promise not to do that.
Just one.
Who's talking? Oh, go ahead, Lynn. Go.
Oh, I just wanted to thank you for the really great summaries that you did when they were so long this week, and you did such a fantastic job of putting it exactly in the time. And that's really a remarkable accomplishment, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Always amazed at this capability of summarizing 7 dapim, and this week especially into 1 hour. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Very impressive. Yeah, I'm still on 96 because, like you said, they're so long, but they are so full of important stuff. So I'm going slow.
Okay, slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah. I had a student that asked me, when did the 36 Rabbanits come about in our literature and in our history? Now, I can research it, but could you get me into the area where I should start?
On this page, what I just said.
Okay. Yeah, because I heard it in that jog. Is that the first time it's kind of alluded to?
That's the source. That's the source. On Daf, hold on. Daf 97.
97 or something. Okay.
Towards the end of Daf 97, that's the source. And it gives you the verse of why 36. Again, doesn't give you too much because it seems to be a more spiritual, secret idea. But this is the source.
The life to life, l'chaim, two lives.
All right. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom. See
Shabbat Shalom.
The Ezrat Hashem next week will be a regular week. And then there's going to be a little bit of a change for Pesach, but I'll tell you about it next week. So next week, time. But we are, as I said, we are changing the clocks tomorrow. So meaning next week will be the regular, however many hours it used to be.
2 o'clock.
Okay.
Have
a good night.
Thanks again. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.